And your first question comes from chapter 13. So one's a general question. You'll have one from 13, one from 14, and one that's a general question. Critical cultural theorists argue that elites use their power over the media to maintain a culture that is beneficial to them and detrimental to others. Do you agree or disagree? How do you account for the vast majority of people who seem content with the current structure and the operation of our media system? Defend your answer. This one is very broad, like the rest of them, but make sure that you explain to me in the first part of the question specifically what they're saying, who are the elites, how do they utilize that, and how do they maintain a culture that's beneficial to them. I mean, if you think about the basic structure, it's anybody in power will always want to stay in power. And how do they manipulate the system to do that? I mean, it could be with the general oligarchs that own some of these media companies, could be politically, it could be a vast number of things. You could talk about the fact that also in the second part, so it's whether you agree or disagree that this is a structure of things. So you have to explain it to me what we're talking about in that first part, what that says. And it is in chapter 13, but you won't find, your opinion is going to be, or your thoughts on it and defending your thoughts are going to be a big part of this answer as well. So it's whether or not you agree with them. And then you always have to defer to the account that it seems like this is a system that's been in place for a while. People are okay with it. You could say that people aren't okay with it based on the system that we seem to be a little less accepting or trusting of media, and it seems to be the vilified for most things and what's kind of created from that. But it does seem like a structure that we still are complacent with in many ways, or you may disagree with that idea. In the last few years, in what we've seen the last couple of years, will really kind of show that it is very different than what it says. So you don't have to agree with it completely. You don't have to say that the elites are using it, but I want you to make sure when you explain to me in this answer, you show or you demonstrate that you understand the question and that you understand it and you have formed your own opinion of it based on the research and the reading and your understanding of media. So to explain a couple things, be sure that you look at this review and ask any questions when I put it up on the discussion, because that's kind of the best place to do it. I could tell from test number 3 that several people, or at least a few people, had not checked the review to kind of see what I was looking for those questions. So this is going to be up and available for you, and I'm going to talk about both of these very quickly, or give you a little more detail of what I'm looking for. So I did reduce the number from 3 questions to 2. I'm kind of trying to take a little bit pressure off towards the end with all of the things that you have to cover, especially with the final paper that you're doing to turn in before the end of the month as well. This will be available for you from midnight on the 27th until the 30th. Midnight on the 30th. So you'll have that time to go over and do this test. I have the description, kind of what I'm looking for the answers as far as word count, things like that. So for the first question, what is the distinction between pornography, obscenity, and indecency? The Supreme Court has ruled on this, and you'll find the distinction written by the Supreme Court in Chapter 14. So look at Chapter 14, you'll be able to find most of this, which enjoy First Amendment protection and which do not. The thing about this question is there's some ambiguity in it between some of the actual findings, some of the legal specifications, and the rest is just purely your opinion on the content. Would you grant protection to all forms of content, or would you restrict them all? When it says defend your position, as with everything, explain to me why. If you think everything needs to be restricted, then explain why that is, because in the legal system, they have kind of gone both ways with that, where they haven't really defined it as clearly. So explain where the current standings are and then what your opinion is. Remember, when it talks about indecency and pornography and obscenity, that's via definition. That's by some community standards and definition as well. So art, what one person would consider art, another person might consider obscene. And so you will run into cases like that. So that's what I'm looking for. And again, the end of it is just defending where you stand with it, what you think should be protected, if any, and or do you think it should all be protected and adults should be able to define themselves. Um, Make sure you stick with the concept of, especially when it comes to something like pornography, which is protected speech, um, are protected in the courts. Be sure you're not getting into things like child pornography or things that are directly and legally defined and illegal. A lot of times we like to say, okay, I would restrict if it came to, yes, everyone restricts when it comes to the involving of underage people, children. So child pornography is illegal, so that's not really part of this conversation any way, shape, or form. But where is the definition between obscenity and indecency and those things, and where does that fall? The second one is a lot of what you've taken away from the semester. During this class, we discussed how media has a major influence on the choices we make as consumers and citizens. Take a close and critical look at your lifestyle and media consumption. How do you believe the media has shaped the choices you have made to this point? There are other influences of your life, of course, such as family, friends, religion, all of those things that can be big influences. But can those influences be unaffected by media? Take a look at beliefs as well as consumption. Sorry, I didn't know this. Jump to the second one. Beliefs as well as consumption. Do you see yourself making different choices now that you have studied media and its influence more closely? So when I talk about there are other influences in your life, say your parents, but haven't your parents been defined or been not defined but affected by media influence? Friends, peer groups, those types of things. There's a lot of things, but how does it all work together? And we talked a little bit, it's not in this question, but we've talked about cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is the not wanting to engage in something or rejecting something outright if it goes against your belief system. So look at that. That'd be a good portion, making sure you kind of clarify what cognitive dissonance is and how it affects you. So I'm going to read through that one more time. During this class, we discussed how media has a major influence on the choices we make as consumers and citizens. Take a close and critical look at your lifestyle and media consumption. How do you believe the media has shaped your choices? The choices you have made to this point. There are other influences in your life, but can those influences be unaffected by media? Take a look at beliefs as well as consumption. Do you see yourself making different choices now that you've studied media and its influence more closely? Now remember, when I talk about media, it's a very broad spectrum. It's commercials, it's TV shows, it's news programs, it's everything all encompassing. Um, and it's really kind of a look heavy. It's a chance for you to take a critical look at your consumption and look at how that consumption and exposure has affected lifestyle changes, some of your life up to this point. This will be in discussion. If you have any questions, please write down your questions into the discussion portion of the class or of the underneath the video. So I will be posting this shortly. Contact me if you want me to clarify anything specifically in some of this as well.